baggage of an oppressive moral system that subjected them to a sort of slave mentality and a sort of very harsh, intolerant treatment of the indigenous folks. Who's this guy? He's a conquistador. Does anyone recognize what he's carrying?
The sword?
And a blanket infested with smallpox. This was the spread of smallpox was a very deliberate tactic in the colonization of the Americas. Does anyone recognize this guy over here?
Slave trader.
He's a slave trader. That's right. The economy of the colonies was largely based on slavery, and the history of slavery is the effects of it are still with us today.
First Indian slaves, and then after they died out, imported slaves.
That's right. That's exactly right. Who's this guy here? He's a judge, and you can see he's carrying the Western concepts of justice and the Western concept of time, which both had were both profoundly different than those of the indigenous peoples in the colonized areas. So you can see that these wasps are spreading out, and they're building a new hive. They're swarming out and building this new hive here. Does anyone recognize? Does the new hive look familiar? That's right. It's the United States, right? And what are all these critters in these cells here? Grubs, larvae. Yeah. What? They are fat ones, aren't they? Some fatter than others. Why do you think? Why do you think they're larvae? What is the purpose? Yeah, what's the purpose of larvae? To eat and eat and eat. That's at that stage in an insect's life. So we've got there's a few here. You can see they're spending all their time watching television and on the internet. They're awash in information, and yet they never really communicate with each other very often. And you can see that there are a few here who are exceptionally large. This technology one, who's kind of in Washington, represented by Microsoft. This one was included because the technology industry is incredibly consumptive of energy and resources. And in fact, I'm sorry, it's really hot up here. I'm like dying. That might help. So the production of one computer requires 1,500 gallons of water and produces 47 pounds of toxic waste. Most people don't know that when they go out and buy their new laptop or their, updated new gizmos. What about this guy? Does anyone recognize this? It's in the state of Montana. McDonald's. And McDonald's specifically, but it's about beef. Any idea why beef maybe is something that's highlighted in relation to Plan Colombia?
High amount of waste.
What's that?
High amount of waste with beef and high energy.
Yeah.
Not sustainable.
Rainforests in Colombia?
Exactly. Yeah, and especially in Brazil, but in many places in South America. And of course, as you said, it's a highly wasteful. In a lot of ways, it's a highly wasteful food source because cows require square miles of land.
And then the ones that are grain fed take 17 pounds of grain to get 1 pound of beef.
Right. What about this one? This is our neighbor, Minnesota. Anybody have an idea what's going on there? She's on a shopping spree at the Mall of Americas, right? And buying up lots of with credit card, with the credit card in hand, buying up lots of cheap sweatshop made products. And what about this one here in New York? 8-Ball. What's he doing? Stuffing cocaine up his nose. And you'll notice that cocaine is actually not mentioned all that often in this poster. A lot of people are really confused by that. They say, well, I thought this was a poster about the drug war. Isn't it all about cocaine? Well, in fact, it's not. But we'll get into that more later. But this is a really important piece because the United States is the world's largest consumer of cocaine by far. And the RAND Corporation, which is a right-wing think tank, conducted a study on the effectiveness of Plan Colombia in terms of as a drug war. And they found that in terms of dollars spent, it was 59 times more effective to rehabilitate drug users here in the United States than it was to spray poisons on the coca fields in Colombia. 59 times. And these are the guys who are funded by the people who created Plan Colombia. So why might Plan Colombia be happening still, you might ask? Well, maybe we can go down to Texas here and look at this grub. Who's this guy?
Cowboy hat and
It's big oil. He's got some gas pumps down there, is what those are. And it's a big old SUV face. So Colombia is incredibly rich in natural resources, and we go into more detail as we go farther down. But oil is definitely one of them. Colombia is the 9th largest exporter of oil to the United States, and it's being gobbled up at an incredible rate. So the last grub that we'll talk about is here in California. Anybody recognize this guy? I like to call him Larval Schwarzenegger. Notice he has a Disney hat and a couple of Uzis in his big, steroid pumped arms. This is more about the commodification of violence and the celebration of militarism and warfare. And in fact, Disney is specifically highlighted because, did anybody see the movie Black Hawk Down? No?
Somalia.
Yes. Black Hawk Down is actually a direct collaboration between Disney and the U.S. Army. They made an agreement that Disney could use the Army's vehicles to give it an air of authenticity. And in trade, the Army was allowed to edit the script any way they saw fit. So, I'm sure we can all think of lots of other examples of the way the military is intertwined with Hollywood. But we're kind of on a tight schedule, so we're going to move on. Can we go to the next? So this next section is a constellation of surveillance. And we'll go through this fairly briefly. Over here, up in that corner, that's an AWAC plane. They fly those over Colombia daily. They're communications planes. They transmit communications between bases and aircraft in the air. But they're also spy planes. They have these powerful microphones that are far beyond anything I know about. But they're constantly monitoring South America and the whole area that the United States considers its sphere of influence.